Interviewing while pregnant can be a lot. First of all, you're pregnant, so your emotions are already all over the place. And on top of that, you're interviewing, which is usually a stressful process. And that too, interviewing while pregnant, you have this underlying guilt of knowing that as soon as you sign for a job, you're going to be asking for maternity leave or requesting a later start date because of your maternity leave. So it can be a lot to go through. So I personally just finished an interview season while I was 5 months pregnant. It was crazy, but I've learned a lot. So I wanted to create this video to kind of unpack all of the anxieties surrounding this process, my recommendations on what to do, and of course, most importantly, what I wore. So if that sounds interesting to y'all, then just keep watching. So my recommended general approach to the interview is to treat it like any other interview. The reality is you're not going to be pregnant forever, so the focus of the interview should be on you and not on your pregnancy. And the general attitude you need to ingrain into your brain is that you are qualified for this job. Your boss and your hiring team, they looked at your CV and they saw that you met all of the qualifications. So all this in-person interview is just to see what your personality is like. So you want to be judged on your personality and your merit, not your cute baby bump. In addition to them judging you fairly, you also need to keep in mind you are judging them. So you need to keep asking yourself, is this job a good fit for me? And will I be happy here? Because with a new baby on the way, especially for me, this is my first pregnancy. So I know once my child is out there in the world, and even now, they're going to be the most important thing to me. So I need to focus my attention not on worrying about, what they will think of my baby bump or if they'll find out I'm pregnant. But no, it should be on figuring out if this is the right group of people you want to work with long term. And for me, repeating those things over and over in my head and reminding me of my priorities, that actually took away from the anxiety of, being pregnant and wondering what judgments they might be passing about that. Okay, so the $1,000,000 question is, at what point should you disclose your pregnancy? And legally speaking, no one is allowed to ask you if you're pregnant. So there is a law in place that makes it illegal for an employer to discriminate against a job applicant based off of pregnancy. But legalities aside, a general rule of thumb is to wait until you get the actual job offer and then immediately let the team know that you are expecting a baby, and more importantly, need to figure out the details of your maternity leave. And why this is the general rule of thumb is because if they give you an offer and then you say that you're pregnant and they rescind that offer, then that could also be grounds for a lawsuit. However, I didn't actually do this. I ended up disclosing my pregnancy at the end of the in-person part of the interview. So this is before they even gave me a job offer. And I did that for several reasons. I had an 8-hour-long interview day and I spoke to maybe 30 people in the office. And I had a good feeling that this was a group of people who valued work-life balance. Everyone I spoke to, or I feel like 90% of the people I spoke to all had kids, family life, and they had very unique schedules that allowed them to maximize their time off so they could be with their family. And on top of that, my future boss was so welcoming and so hospitable. So at the end of the day, it was a vibes-based decision. I also recommend this method because it helped to take away the anxiety of knowing that I'm hiding a major life event from my future colleagues. Because I knew, and this is something just based off of my own personality, I hate feeling like I'm being dishonest to people. Even though I would have told them anyway that I was pregnant once, if they did give me the offer, I just couldn't bear to wait a week for that to happen because, they don't give you the offer on the day of the in-person interview. First, they have to deliberate, and then usually a week later, someone will give you a call, right? But I just could not bear to keep that prolonged, and it really just cleared my head of that anxiety and let me get on with my life. So that was another reason I went ahead and did it. I just wanted to relieve this anxiety off of my chest. And finally, the last reason, probably the most important thing, was at the end of that long day, I came to this realization that, if they didn't want me because I was pregnant, then I didn't want the job. I finally reconciled with the fact that, okay, if they don't want me for the job, then what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm just going to not have a job and be home with my child. How, is that so bad? And I don't know if it was because I was so tired at the end of a long interview day, but I damn well feel that way now. So my advice is to consider the worst case scenarios if you don't get the job, and you'll find that it's usually not that bad. Okay? There are thousands of jobs out there, and there's going to be one that fits your personality and, more importantly, values your work-life balance and your family obligations. And that's going to be much more well-suited to you and give you much more job satisfaction. So don't stress. So now I wanted to share some anxieties I experienced on my interview trail. And the first one was feeling guilty that your job is no longer your number one priority. And this was reflected in the kinds of questions I was asking, seeing how people were able to achieve job flexibility, if they had a family at home, how did they make sure obligations were met there in addition to at work. And also just knowing that I was interviewing for this job, well aware that I was going to have to take maternity leave. So I felt a lot of guilt in that kind of approach. But, this just comes with the identity shift of being a parent or becoming a parent. And it's something that you get used to over time. Honestly, my first trimester, I had quite a rough time with it because it was a huge change for my brain. But now, nearing the end of my second trimester, I feel so much more comfortable with it. So, my advice for this anxiety is that it does get better with time. Just make sure you have the support of people who love and truly care about you, and make sure you let them know about your anxieties, because it feels so good to have someone to talk to through all of this. And another anxiety I had was also feeling dishonest going into the interview, because this is just a personality thing. I am such a team player, and I value loyalty and commitment. So I just felt like I was being so dishonest, interviewing for this job and knowing that I would immediately have to ask for maternity leave. But you know what? At the end of the day, these people are hiring a human being, not a robot. So if your personal life is too much for them to handle, then I think that right there is a red flag. And there's actually research to back this up. In fact, a well-cited study on work-family enrichment and job performance found that when positive experiences from family life carry over into work, it can actually improve job satisfaction, mood, and performance. So now more than ever, employers are motivated to create a work environment that supports this work-life balance and people who have family obligations. Okay, so now let's get to the fun part. What to wear for a job interview, particularly when you are quite far along in your pregnancy, like I was. So I think the general approach is to not stress about people seeing your belly, because what that does is it makes you feel uncomfortable, and you look uncomfortable in your body language. For example, I was researching heavily on tips and tricks to interview while pregnant, and on Reddit there were some women saying that you should try to hunch your shoulders to hide your belly, or you should suck your stomach in at all times to minimize the size. And I totally disagree with that, because what it does is it just gives off this body language that you're very uncomfortable and you're not sure of yourself. So and also your personality can't shine through if you're so worried about how to position your body. So with that being said, though, I still believe that the focus of the interview should be off of your belly and should be on you instead. And so instead of using your body language or your body posture to hide your belly, you should let your clothes do the work for you. And I will show y'all right now what I did. Okay, so this is literally what I wore for the interview. So I'm just wearing some maternity pants that fits over my bump. It's super comfortable, has pockets. And then up top is the most important part. So this professional shirt, it's one of those shirts that's like poofy up here, and then it has an elastic at the waistband level. So the trick here is you want the elastic waistband to be sitting at your umbilicus, okay? Don't let it sit over here because that makes it very obvious. It kind of hugs the curvature of your pregnant belly. But if you move it up here and if it's sitting right at your umbilicus, it just gives you this normal silhouette look, and more importantly, it takes the eye off of the bump and instead back to your face. So another thing I did on the day of the interview was also take some double-sided body tape and tape it to this waistband area of the shirt, and then I literally just taped it where I wanted it to sit the full day because I absolutely did not want to stress about my outfit and whether or not it's moving. And I highly recommend that because you just want to focus on the interview and the interactions you're making, right? You don't want to stress about what you're wearing. So this is not complete yet because you need one more item. Blazers are important because they take the eye off of the belly and put it onto your shoulders because of these nifty little shoulder pad thingies. And this just is another layer that removes focus from your belly. And also, if you're interviewing for a corporate job, chances are they're probably going to freeze the crap out of the building, so you're going to feel cold. So this also kind of hides the silhouette of your bump a little bit more because it is more loose. So this honestly is like the thing I would wear for any future interview if I were to do it while pregnant. Okay, so before we wrap up, I just wanted to share that I did end up signing for the job where I ended up coming clean to my future boss at the end of the in-person interview and just told him that I was pregnant because I felt such a good vibe about the coworkers and the work-life balance priority. You know, I feel so excited to join this team of people because I know, like this is the first step of them accepting that motherhood is going to become a major part of my life. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but just the biggest thing I learned from interviewing while pregnant was that if my future boss or hiring team did not look favorably upon my pregnancy, then I don't want the job because my unborn child right now is the most important thing in my life. So I do not want to work for a job that does not recognize it, and neither do you. So with that, that's all I have to say. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to drop it down in the comment box below. Otherwise, if you like that video, then please hit the like and subscribe button. I put out new videos every week, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!